Hello everyone, and welcome along to the channel, and welcome along to a very, very special video today. Not only is it special because you can see my ugly mug on your screen now, and these two guys as well. You can see these two mugs on your screen as well. That's special in a very special way, but it's also special because it is time for the quarterfinals of Super Rugby. So get ready, sit down, relax, and enjoy what us three are going to bring you over the next little while. Of course, any special rugby discussion deserves a special guest from the land of Oz. And that is the Scottish Cannon. Welcome along. Thanks for joining me.
Thanks for having me on your channel, Cornflake, as always.
And of course, you need some input from way over the other side of the world in the glorious place of South Africa. We've got Brett Hartley joining us. Welcome along, Brett. How you going?
Yeah, pretty good, man. Thanks for having me on your channel again.
So we have all bases covered here for hopefully a nice little discussion about what is going to happen this weekend in the quarterfinal matches of Super Rugby. So 4 games going on. If you've been living under a rock and don't know what is happening, we of course have the Brumbies kicking things off against the Highlanders. Then we have the Hurricanes up against the Sharks, the Lions playing the Crusaders, and the Stormers finally, last but not least, up against the Chiefs. So that is what we have to look forward to. We're going to have a bit of a chinwag about this, see what we think about who's going to win and all that sort of jazz, and of course make our predictions, which I hope you're all ready for that as well. So let's kick things off. Starting at the top, Friday night, it is in Canberra, of course, the Brumbies, the only Australian representing the finals of Super Rugby this year. They're up against the Highlanders. Of course, resident Australian is the Scottish Cannon. What do you think? What can the Brumbies really offer this tournament at this stage?
Honestly, it's going to be a very interesting match because the Brumbies' form's been all over the place this season. You know, they've been smacked a couple times by New Zealand sides. They smacked the Canes in the first round of the season. I mean, they lost to the Blues a couple of weeks ago. So, you know, they've been very, very patchy, just like the Waratahs and pretty much every other Australian team. And I honestly feel like this is going to be a very difficult game for the Highlanders because they are coming across to Australia in 0 degrees Canberra GAO Stadium. So, you know, I don't think the weather conditions will affect them like they would, say, a South African side being on the bottom of New Zealand, the Highlanders. But I think it will be a very solid match. David Pocock back from injury since the injury he got in the Cook Cup against England in the first game. So that's going to be a huge in for them. Obviously, going to have much more solid presence at the breakdown. And honestly, it just really depends on how tactically the Highlanders want to play when they come in. If they want to let the Brumbies win the ruck the entire time and just really try only get in the ruck when necessary, when they feel like they can win the ball, I feel like that will go a long way for them. If they get the spacing right on defense, I don't think the Brumbies will have the attack to win the game that the Highlanders that do have with their attacking weapons out wide.
So the Highlanders have made a couple of changes heading into this match. All of them, both of them, in the back row as well, with Christie and Squire coming back. The talk about that to combat the return of David Pocock, which you already mentioned as well. The Highlanders, surely the form team going into this match. I think you'd surely agree with that. And the way that the Australian conference has been, do you think that weakens the Brumbies a bit from the games that they've had playing Australian teams twice?
Well, potentially. I think they played the Force twice and the Waratahs twice. I mean, they beat the Tars twice this season. I went to one of the games, and it was a pretty disastrous display from the Waratahs that day. Honestly, I feel like, you know, obviously we're lucky in Australia that we actually do get to play the New Zealand teams with the format that some South African teams don't, which we'll get into later on. But I feel like the Brumbies do have that experience against the New Zealand sides, beating the Canes in round 1, obviously, but haven't done since. So I feel like they will know sort of what the Kiwi sides want to do, but at the same time, the Australian sides have only won 3 out of 21 games against New Zealand sides this year. So that's a pretty scary stat.
An interesting stat to follow that up, since you're being stat man on me. Only 2 foreign sides have actually won in New Zealand this season, which are both amazing South African sides, with the Lions and the Sharks. So, well, we'll cover that more, I guess, when we talk about the Sharks and the Lions actually playing, but that is a pretty big stat to only have 2 foreign teams, and neither of them are Australian either, that's pretty bad for Australia. I think they've been horrible this year, Australia. They've been dreadful. Brett, do you have anything to add? What do you think about Australia this season, from what you've seen from them? Where's it all gone wrong?
Obviously it's been a disappointing season with the Australian Super Rugby teams. They've just lacked structure. They've lacked intensity a lot of the times. Obviously, the Force and the Reds really had no hope this season. Rebels were up there, but first half of the season, second half they dropped off. Obviously, Waratahs and Brumbies were fighting for that spot last week, but out of all the teams, the Brumbies are probably the lucky ones to get in there just because of the conference system. Without it, I don't think the Brumbies would have got in. And the fact that, I'm not sure quite how many, but the Highlanders are quite a few log points ahead of the Brumbies, and the Brumbies are still able to host the quarterfinal, which is, a bit controversial. But yeah, I'm obviously tipping the Highlanders. They're obviously the form side going into this game.
Yeah, that's probably a different conversation for another day.
We could go for 20 minutes on that just
alone. We already have many times already.
Many times.
Anyway, so the Highlanders, I completely agree with you. The Highlanders definitely the form side going into this game. You can't argue with the way they played, their form, their lineup, their explosive backline, the likes of the wingers, Osborne and Aholo, and Feketara in the middle, Sopawanga, the class number 10, and they've just played well. Their form heading into it has been as good as it gets, beating the Chiefs. I mean, when you look at that and compare it to the Brumbies, it just seems like it's one-way traffic. It seems like the Brumbies won't have a chance. I've got the Highlanders going all the way. Brett, you got the Highlanders too?
Yep.
Cannon, what is your call?
I think this is going to be interesting. One thing I will mention, it is an Australian refereeing this match. So Angus Gardner he's a really good ref, Angus Gardner, but there's always that potential for some bias. I don't want to mention that, but it is Australian refereeing, so that could slightly go against the Highlanders because Angus Gardner is more aware to how the Australian teams how they want to play. But I do think that Highlanders will just get up, but being in Canberra and some other factors, I think it will be a closer match than a lot of people expect.
You're gonna put a score on it?
I think it'll be relatively lower scoring, maybe 2018 Highlanders, maybe.
Brett, you got a score?
I'd say Highlanders probably win by 13 or 14.
Oh, big scores. I'll go Highlanders too. I'd say 34-16. I don't think the Brumbies are going to stand a chance against the attack of the Highlanders. Just class, but I do worry about that 9-10-12 combination that the Brumbies have of Kubeli, Liliafano and Tamura. I think if that clicks, maybe they could have done something if they had some better outside backs. But all in all, we all agree it's all going to be Highlanders one-way traffic quite easily so far by our picks going off that match number 1. Okay, so that's it. Game number 2. And this one, well, it's a bit of a mixed opinion what could happen here. The Hurricanes are hosting the Sharks. This is 1v8 on the ladder as they group up with the 4 conference leaders, 4 wildcards. I know no one really understands it, but it's not that really difficult. Brett, South African expert over there, what do you think about the Sharks? What chance do they have? They're very defensive of what I've seen from them, pick up a lot of mistakes and errors from the other sides. Do they have a chance against the attacking ability of the Hurricanes at home as well?
I mean, on paper, you would say the Hurricanes would definitely have an advantage to win the game over the Sharks. Obviously, the Sharks did get the win over the Hurricanes in Durban a couple of weeks ago after the Sharks came back from their tour from New Zealand. But I think for the Sharks to win, they're going to need to slow the Hurricanes down quite a bit. Obviously, like you said, they're a very defensive team, and they need to slow the Hurricanes' ball down, disrupt those offloads that, all New Zealand teams love to do. The Sharks do have a chance. They've been pretty good this year. Obviously, they're the bottom qualifying team. They definitely had a fight for their qualification, but they do have a chance. But as much as I love them, I'd probably have to say the Hurricanes will take this one away.
How much of a loss do you think will not having Patrick Lambie be for the Sharks?
Oh, it's a huge loss. Obviously, he's our captain, and he's one of the most experienced fly-halves in South Africa right now. And Garth April has been his replacement. And he's definitely a really good talent. He's fast off the ball. He distributes the ball really well, but he's very unexperienced. And playoff Super Rugby is a different beast to the regular season. Teams want to win at all costs, and I don't know whether he will be able to step up to the occasion. Like I said, he's a very decent player, but I think we're definitely going to miss Lambie.
Yeah, it's a massive loss to lose him, and it's the same rule as with Liam Messam, who we'll cover again soon. Just basing it that you've got enough cover in that position, and he hasn't played more than 4 matches. I mean, I can understand the 4 matches thing, but I think they went too far going, saying, no, you've got enough players in that position. You don't need that extra guy. I think that's just a bit silly. But there we go. We won't have Messam. We won't have Lambie. I think it's going to hurt the Sharks quite considerably. Last time out versus the Sunwolves, the Sharks probably weren't at their best. Probably conceded a lot against a team like the Sunwolves who score a lot of points. Do you have any input on this one, Cannon, about this match?
I feel like it's going to be almost next to impossible for the Sharks to win in New Zealand, especially in Wellington. Westpac Stadium is going to be filled to the brim, and I must say Bowen Barrett is the best 10 in the world right now.
Yeah, I agree with that.
He's just absolutely amazing. I saw his form when they came and beat the Tars in Sydney, the Canes, and they're really, really good. They're really, really good. And obviously having that back line with Julian Savia and, the likes. So I feel like it will be I reckon it'll be a rampage, honestly, to the Hurricanes.
Ooh, a rampage. That's not good for the South African fans at all. Interesting point on Beauden Barrett. He is try assist. I think he's second on the try assist. He's got 14 for the season, which is a huge amount. And I think he makes that back line of the Hurricanes look a million times better than it really is. Now, I'm obviously from Southland, for anyone who doesn't know, in New Zealand. Willis Halaholo, guy that's come from nowhere, plays down here in the ITM Cup, which it was recently, and really, he wasn't that good when he played for Southland, and I don't understand where he's come from to get to these heights he has with the Hurricanes, but he seems to be going quite well. Barrett makes him look even better, and if they find some form in Julian Savia, yeah, it could be a bit nasty, but Savia's horribly out of form, and they're still playing so well already, and it's like it just possibly could they just get better as the competition goes on. So who have we got to win, and what's your score, Brett?
I mean, the Hurricanes have been the silent assassins this year. You would expect the Chiefs, the Crusaders, to top New Zealand Conference, and a couple of results went their way, and then able to top their conference to get that first spot. So, as much as I don't like it, I would tip the Canes by about 15.
Ooh, 15. Cannon, yours?
I said a rampage. I reckon it'll be a little bit more than 15, maybe 20, 25 points. I think it'll be quite dominant display.
Jeez. Yeah, it depends to me what sort of game it is. I think the Sharks, if they can pressure their opponent into making the mistakes and the errors that they can feed off, then the Sharks, I think they could win this game. I mean, look when they played the Crusaders, who were in fantastic form at the time, and the Sharks just didn't let them in. Crusaders got frustrated, lost the ball, and the Sharks, they can score counter-attack and just playing off someone's mistakes. So if the game breaks down like that, I think the Sharks could be in a chance, but at home, Hurricanes, Westpac Stadium, it's all pointing to their side. Topping the conference as well is a big part of it, so I'll go off them too. But 25, no, I don't think I'll go that much. I'd say probably agree more with Brett along the 15 side of things for the gap between those two. All right, that's 2 games done. Easy. We're flying through these brilliantly already. Amazing stuff. 2 to go. Both South Africa versus New Zealand. I'm sorry, Cannon, but Australia sucks so bad. What are you going to do about it? But next up, I think this is possibly the big game of the weekend. It's the Lions versus the Crusaders.
Yeah.
Now, this is going to be massive. This is going to be a big game. The Lions leading point scorers, most points in the competition, 535, 71 tries, most try scorers as well, average of 35.7 points per game. You can't argue with what the Lions have done this year. The Crusaders have been pretty average. Brett, what's your pick?
The average.
Obviously the Lions did gamble a bit last week, sending a second-string team to Argentina, and obviously losing that top seed that, that they should have really, played for. But obviously they did gamble a bit. They should have probably sent. It was a 50-50 call. They wanted to rest their starters. But they did lose the top seed. And they obviously got the Crusaders instead of the Sharks, which is a massive probably step up. I think they would have preferred to play the Sharks if you asked me. But they do get the Crusaders, and in my opinion, this will be the game of the round. Just the style that these two teams play, I think it will be an all-out, or weather permit, it will be definitely a very good running game to watch. I think the Lions will be able to get past this. I They've been the form team of Super Rugby. I think, in my opinion, the best team to watch this year is the Lions. De Klerk and Yankees have formed a formidable combination at that 9-10. And obviously you got Ron Combrink who on that right wing, who's been, for both the Springboks and the Lions this year, has been probably one of the best in South Africa, definitely the best wing. And you've also got Skorsan on the other wing, who's scored some pretty good tries this year.
It's all looking good for the Lions. I really enjoy watching the Lions play, the way they attack so much. I think, especially in New Zealand here, I find it disgusting, to be honest, but they completely written off. No one gives them a chance. Like, the uproar when they were the first team to qualify for the playoffs I think it was disgusting, really. To say that the competition's flawed because the Lions qualified first, how do you figure that out? I don't get it. But they're the best attacking team. The stats say so. The table says so as well. And against the Crusaders, now, I said they were average before, Cannon. Now, I heard you say something about average. I don't think... They may have been good against Australia and South Africa opponents, but they never have really got it up against the New Zealand opponents. Now, they've only beaten the Blues from New Zealand. They haven't beaten any of the other New Zealand sides, which is a key step for the team. Should they get past the Lions, it's hard to see them going any further, but do you think they can get past the Lions? Maybe is it the way that the non-New Zealand sides play that suits them a bit better or something?
Honestly, I don't know what it is. I really don't know what it is. That stat, I didn't know that stat. I thought that was pretty crazy. But yet again, they're not playing the New Zealand side this weekend, the Crusaders. A couple of things I want to mention. First, obviously, the trip over to South Africa, not going to be the best for the Crusaders at all. That after the Lions rested basically the entire team for the match against the Jaguars, or La Wow, however the Spanish way you say it.
Jaguares.
La Juarez. Obviously they left most of their stars at home, which was obviously a smart play for the Lions, but at the same time, will they be a little bit rusty in the first 10-15 minutes of the game, the Lions? That's obviously something to mention. And obviously, the uproar from the New Zealand media about the Lions making the finals first, I think also what added to that is that the Lions were minnows, I would say, for the last couple of years, and they really sort of came out of nowhere this year. I sort of wrote them off at the start of the season. I would have had them in the bottom sort of bit of the table if you asked me at the start of the year where the Lions were going to be. But being in South Africa, scoring the most points on the table, I think it will be a good match. But I do see the Lions getting past this match, even though I have said the Crusaders were going to take the comp a couple of weeks ago. After that performance last weekend, I think after reconsideration, I think the Lions will get over just by a couple of factors.
There's a couple of team pieces about the Crusaders as well. No Nemani Nadolo, which is going to be huge. He's really their biggest attacking weapon. They also lose Joe Moody, who's out with a neck injury, a nerve neck injury. But bizarre, Nadolo's out, hamstring injury. You've got to wonder if the Crusaders went wrong when they went to Fiji. It kind of fell off the tracks a bit there when they played the Chiefs. It didn't really go their way. They come home. Things weren't really the same when playing the New Zealand opponents a couple of times as well. Didn't really help. And then, of course, there's the fact of the travel and the fact that the Lions are well rested and everything kind of counts against them. You're going with the Lions, Brett. What got a scoreline for us? You think that the Crusaders could put up a fight if they got a chance? A little one?
You never write the Crusaders off, do you? They're the most successful side in Super Rugby. The seven Super Rugby titles. You can never really look past that. But my scoreline will probably be about 24-10 or 24-12 around that line. So, I think the Crusaders do have a good chance, but I think the Lions are just too good right now.
Kenan, your thoughts?
I think it'll be a bit higher scoring. I think same sort of scoreline, but maybe like 30-18 or 32-20. I think it'll be a bit more high scoring than what Brett's saying.
Yeah, I think it depends on the weather conditions, of course, but I'd imagine South Africa, it's always sunny, isn't it? The sun's always out. It's so high up in the sky. It's like the clouds just go around South Africa. I think it should be an entertaining game. It depends how the Crusaders react to the style of play. Like the Lions, they do play an attacking game. Whether the Crusaders can deal with that or whether they'll be like the New Zealand teams and they could hit a brick wall against that as well. I'm going off the Lions. I think the Lions are just one of the best teams, if not the best team in the competition. You know, you look at the Lions, the Hurricanes, the Highlanders, the Chiefs in parts. Surely they're just about the best of the best, and I think, yeah, it'll be a high-scoring one, and the Lions should take it by, I think, 13 and plus. Go overs on this one if you're putting a bet on. That's my tip for the week.
Can I just make one more comment, just quickly?
Sure.
Just on the point last week when they rested 15 players going over to Argentina and not even getting one bonus point to take the number 1 seed. If the Lions get through to the finals, they most likely won't host it if the Hurricanes go all the way through. So that's a big... That was a big risk, and really they should have just wrapped up that top seed. I think it may come back to bite them in a couple rounds if they get all the way through to the final. But, you know, got to wait and see.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that because it should have been the Chiefs. You know, the Chiefs should have been the team. They were the front runners as well before that week even started. Brett, you had something to say?
Yeah, 100% agree with what Cannon had to say there. I mean, history has shown no South African team has won Super Rugby title outside of South Africa. You know, we've been in a few finals outside, but we've lost every single one of them. So giving up that first spot could be very crucial for the Lions.
Yeah, is it worth a week's rest? That's the big question. We're going to find out, I guess, over the next 3 weeks if they get that far. Yeah, it's going to be interesting. All right, so we're still in South Africa. We're moving to our 4th and final quarterfinal match of the weekend, and it's the Stormers. Good old Stormers up against the Chiefs. Now, more travel for the Chiefs, and the Chiefs they're in a bit of turmoil at the moment, I think, too. 14 injuries or something they've got, and no Messam, Tamani Valu's out. Just seems to be going from bad to worse for the Chiefs, and they're going to have to really rally together here. They're going to have to rely on, you know, the players that they know, the Cruden, Mackenzie's, James Lowe. I've been harping on about James Lowe for weeks now. He deserves a black jersey, in my opinion. But against the Stormers, the thing I fear about the Stormers, their last 3 games. Now, I mentioned this in my review video of the last round of Super Rugby. Last 3 games of the Stormers were against the Force, the Rebels, and the Kings since the international break. So that's 7 weeks where they haven't really had a decent opponent. Brett, how's that going to affect them? Is that going to be too long without, you know, going into a game against the Chiefs, a battle-hardened side? Is that going to come against them come this match?
I mean, obviously, we're not going to get into it, but, you know, the Stormers are obviously another team that you can kind of talk about the conference system with, but obviously not going to get into that, but...
No, I will.
Obviously, they haven't played any New Zealand teams this season, which is... I can't even, you know, comprehend how, you know, they've figured out this conference system, but the Chiefs will be their first New Zealand opponent, and, you know, it's kind of a baptism of fire, isn't it? You know, the Chiefs, even though they didn't finish top, they've probably been the formed New Zealand team this year. Obviously, results haven't gone their way the last couple of weeks, but so Stormers did get to host this one, but, you know, I really don't see them standing much of a chance against the Chiefs, to be honest.
Yeah, that's really quite interesting as well. How they haven't even played a New Zealand side and how they're going to just explode into the biggest match of their season almost. For the Chiefs, interesting stats, so we carry on with some more stats. Damien Mackenzie, now, All Black this year, didn't get on the field, selected for the All Blacks, but if you've seen his stats, there's in the top 3 for carries, metres gained, clean breaks, and defenders beaten. He's in the top 3 for all of those, and inside him he has Aaron Cruden, who has the most try assists in the tournament with 15. That's some potency. The Stormers, they played brilliantly last weekend, of course, against the Kings. Who wouldn't? Who hasn't? But can they match that in the attacking front if it's going to be good weather for them, Cannon?
It's very, very difficult to say. I mean, the thing with Mackenzie is he's not the tallest bloke on the field and he's not the biggest bloke on the field. And I feel like if you can kick, if the Stormers can kick using the high ball appropriately and playing that field position game that the South African teams are usually more renowned for, and really target Damien Mackenzie in defense, that's a potential weakness for the Stormers, and that's something that they could expose. I mean, when the Waratahs came and smashed the Chiefs, it's another game I went to, so I mean, I remember it more vividly. They smacked them 45-25, and they beat them in the forwards, and they kicked appropriately. So that's something the Stormers need to do. They need to be physical with the Chiefs back and really have a very smart tactical kicking game. If they do that, if they do those two factors right, I can see them actually getting the upset here, and especially being in Cape Town as well. Obviously, going to be very difficult for the Chiefs to come over 16-hour flight or 18-hour flight or whatever it is.
I think the other thing with Mackenzie is the Stormers will be watching last weekend's game against the Highlanders, where Mackenzie had one run and only one real chance of breaking the line, and the Highlanders shut him down completely. He hardly even did anything for the rest of that match. So I think if the Stormers really seriously want to win this game, they'll watch that game against the Highlanders and they'll figure out what they did to shut him down, because from the back, counter-attack play, I don't think anyone's really matched him this season from anywhere around Super Rugby whatsoever. So he's got to be the key man. What's that?
Israel Folau?
Oh, not centre. Doesn't have the attacking abilities back in centre. He's too much up in the line.
Oh,
doesn't get the room.
Got
Mackenzie.
Like 11 or 12 tries this season.
Yeah, well, Mackenzie's got more. Mackenzie's got 11 for sure. Let's argue about it.
Oh,
Let's
God.
pick a score. Who's going to win? Brett, what's your pick? Who's going to take it? Score, close, big win.
I think the Chiefs will run away with it. I think once they get Mackenzie, you would think they would try and get Mackenzie into the game as soon as possible, and he's their spark plug, and he's got, obviously you mentioned Cruden, he's got some great players running off him as well. So I would expect the Chiefs to run away with it, probably winning by about 20, 25 points, I would say.
Ooh, not much faith in the Stormers there at all. Cannon, what do you reckon?
I see the potential for an upset here, to be quite honest. I'm not going to tip the Stormers, but like I said, I think it'll be closer than a lot of people expect. Maybe Chiefs by a few points.
Yeah, I think it's going to be pretty tight too. The Stormers, they haven't, like I said before, they haven't had the best build-up. But the Chiefs, they're really under the pump with injuries and players unavailable, and just they seem to be just bandaged up, and they got some plaster tapes over here, and it just makes you wonder how far they can go until it cracks, start to appear, and things start to fall away. I kind of want to still say the Chiefs, just because it's nationalistic, but it's the Stormers. The Stormers are going to be tough to beat, no matter who they've played.
Do you also think that not playing in the New Zealand side this entire season for the Stormers will affect them, because they haven't been exposed to the New Zealand style of play in about a year or so for a lot of the players? It's
either going to hurt them or it's going to help them. To not have been affected by that, they could. They could have different ideas. They will be watching tapes like nothing else this week, you can imagine. They'll be watching the Chiefs play, they'll be watching everyone play the Chiefs against them, and it could be their downfall. It could be their downfall, but it could be what wins them the game as well. If they have some fresh ideas, not experiencing what it's like, it could be the winning of it for the Stormers, but I'm going to side with the Chiefs. By a whisker. I think it's going to be really close, really, really close, and the Chiefs will probably be sending back a plane full of hospitalised players with broken bones, like they have the rest of the season as well, the way it's going. So, well, that is it. So we're all going, what are we going there? I'm going Chiefs. What are you two going for?
Chiefs as well.
Yeah, Chiefs.
Oh, so we're all going with the Chiefs. So we've all agreed. That's a bit weird. We've all gone with the Chiefs, all gone with the Lions.
The upset can occur, though.
Yeah, the upset could occur. We're still going with the Chiefs. We're all going with the Hurricanes, and we're all going with the Highlanders. So
I mean, it's Super Rugby, so but anything can happen. It's it's the best provincial rugby competition in the world, and every team's somewhat quality to be able to play in it. So anything could happen this weekend.
Yeah, it could be a complete opposite. We could have no New Zealand sides in the semi-finals. It's all well and good to say we could have 4 New Zealand sides in the semis, but we could have none.
And just last question before we go. Who do you think's got the win from now? 8 teams left. Who's going to be the winner in 3 weeks' time, 2 weeks' time?
My pick, I think the Hurricanes are the most informed team at the moment. Backing up from last year, finishing in such good form as well. I wouldn't be surprised if we had a repeat of last year's final. Whether that's possible or not,
I don't think it is, no.
Calculate the point. It depends who wins, though, because if
of course.
the Lions win, then that could stuff it up. Seeing as the Highlanders finished 5th, so they kind of need...
They'll take the Brumbies C. They'll take 4th.
And they'll need the Stormers to win. Yeah, it could be confusing. But yeah, it's possible, depending on who wins the matches as well.
Everything's always possible.
Yeah, everything's
Super
possible.
Rugby format.
And the way that it groups them, like after these semi-finals, after these quarterfinals, I should say, all the 4 teams get reseeded based on their points as well. So it's just because it's not like football where it's like a direct line, they go straight through. They could go anywhere. Who's your pick, Brett? While we're on the topic,
Got to be patriotic and pick the Lions, I would say.
I like the Lions.
So, I don't think the Sharks stand much of a chance. Even if they upset the Hurricanes, they most likely they're either going to be playing probably in South Africa or New Zealand. So I would say it will probably be a Hurricanes-Lions final. And I think the Lions have shown they can win in New Zealand. Obviously, they beat the Chiefs in, I think, the second week of the competition, was it? So,
yep.
It's been, they've proven they can win in New Zealand, and winning in Hamilton is a pretty good achievement. So, another final at Westpac Stadium, I think the Canes could get upset again. I mean, the Highlanders were able to do it last year, and so I think the Lions can do it. But if not the Lions, probably the Hurricanes. They've got the easiest way to the.
Yeah. It helps being the top seed, doesn't it? You get the easier run against the lower seed, well, if you can call it an easier run. Before we wrap up, a couple of extra points. We'll stop off on the last one. You all know it's going to be, but disciplinary action against these teams. Yellow cards, red cards, even for teams like the Jaguars. How much of an effect do you think that's going to have in the playoffs? We've seen a lot of yellow cards as we have over rugby for the last few years. Do you think that's going to play a big part in these matches?
Oh, yeah.
Well, as a ref, yes. It will. They're going to follow the protocol like they have the entire season, and I don't see any margin for error. You've got Angus Gardner, you've got Glenn Jackson, Jakob Piper, and Craig Joubert refereeing these quarterfinals. Four of the best referees in the world, and they're going to do what they're going to do what the referee coaches want them to do. They're going to follow the protocol, and that's just the way it is. And I know some fans don't enjoy it, especially you, Cornflake. I know you're quite vocal about yellow cards when it comes. But when a team infringes and really affects the game and really tries to slow down the game and gets on the wrong side of the referee, that it's going to happen. You're going to get a yellow card, and that's the way it is.
Yeah, it can change the course of a match. So I can just see it deciding a big game, like a quarterfinal or a semi-final like we've seen before. What's your thoughts, Brett?
Yeah, I think, obviously yellow cards, red cards always play a big part. And, the thing that's been doing my head in the last couple of years is I think the IRB, or what do they call it now, World Rugby, need to get some consistency with the high ball rule, taking man out of the air, because...
Yeah, it's been a disaster this year.
Yeah, for identical situations, you've seen penalties given, just penalties. You've seen yellow cards given, and you've seen red cards given. So that's pretty much one of the things that's made me most mad this season, is that, we've seen, identical players getting taken out of the air, landing on the back of their heads, but different, rulings based on interpretation, being handed out to these players.
And I think they base a lot of it on how they land as well, more than actually
it is how they
were
land.
tackled.
That is exactly how it is. I mean, they really don't take intent into it. They don't really take where, that's the thing. There was one in the middle of the season, I forgot, it was in South Africa, when he slipped and took out the legs of the opponent, and then Mike Fraser gave the red card. I thought it was very...
that was Bernard Foley that got taken out there.
Yeah, it was Bernard Foley, wasn't it? Yeah, it was a very unlucky call. He landed on his head, but he slipped. I think that should have been taken into consideration, but I'm obviously not referee. I'm not a Super Rugby ref for a reason at the moment. So, it's just the way it is, unfortunately.
And it follows on from that too, of the players slipping into tackles. We've seen last weekend of a yellow card. Don't remember who it was exactly, but slipping in the tackle and getting taken high. Is it really the tackler's fault? How's he supposed to pull out of something like that? And the high ball thing has been atrocious. I think Ireland, of all places, will be right on that bandwagon for the change in that rule after what happened in the tests against South Africa. Yeah. They'll be right up there on that. But, yeah, it's definitely a problem. Finally, though, I'm going to end on this. I know you don't want to talk about it. But the whole format. Keep it short. What do you think, just overall, about the format? Good, bad, the reason why? Brett, what do you reckon?
Well, I think it needs to change, to be quite honest. Especially the so-called African conferences that also involve the Sunwolves and the Jaguars. I don't think it's quite fair. Obviously, the Sharks and the Lions this year have both had to play New Zealand opposition, and they're still able to cement their playoff spots. But next year supposedly the Sharks the Sharks play Australian opposition while the Bulls and Stormers play New Zealand opposition. I still won't be happy with that, even though it'll probably be easier for my favourite team to get through because they'll be playing Australian opposition.
Quick jab in the guts there.
No, it's the way it is at the moment. The Force the Reds are in shambles at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a big fan of Australian rugby. The Wallabies are my second favourite team, so and obviously I live in Australia. But it is unfortunately true right now. I mean, New Zealand is just in a different level, both the All Blacks and the domestic teams. So, I definitely think the conference system needs to change, especially with those African teams. Maybe the organisers split between you play, some New Zealand teams, you play some Australian teams, but you don't just play one conference.
I think the format has kind of evolved the way that the organisers kind of wanted it, though, when you look at what the quarterfinal matchups are.
Yeah.
I mean, there's an Australian team in there, there's 3 South African teams in there, and there's the 4 New Zealand sides in there as well. And so that's kind of a dream result. There's games in Australia, there's games in New Zealand, there's games in South Africa. That's what more could they want? I think that's really what they've aimed for, to keep interest high, to keep everyone watching the games as well. South Africans are going to be watching, Australians will be watching on Friday night, and then they'll go back to AFL and their budgie smugglers. What do you reckon, Cannon? What's your thoughts? I know you're pretty anti it, but let everyone know.
I think the thing for me is really just the fairness of the draw. I mean, obviously you see the Stormers not playing an Australian conference, Australian team this year. I don't know why they just can't go back to playing everyone once in the season. I don't know why. It'd be the 17 teams, 17 rounds, have 2 byes, a 19-round conference. I mean, it's much shorter than the 26 rounds over in France in the Viva. So, I mean, I don't understand why it's just not a fair draw. That's the thing with me. But I like the old conference system as well, when they're the Australian conference and you play them all twice, because obviously that's going to create more interest for the fans' perspective. Obviously, just like a Waratahs versus Reds match, that's going to get 30,000 fans in the stadium. So, it's again a very big dilemma, but I just feel like the way they've cut up the African conference, the way the Sun Wolves and the Argentinian sides have to travel all over the place without consistent games at home and away. I think that's just my issue, is just just being fair when it comes to the draw.
Do you think fans are going to get sick of playing the same derby matches? Do you think people are going to get sick of seeing the Brumbies and the Waratahs, or the Reds and the Waratahs, the New South Wales, Queensland thing? Are they going to get sick of that? Are they going to, 3 years from now, seeing that twice a season?
Well, they're not, because it's how that's Australia versus Australia is going to sell more than Australia versus South Africa match. It's just the way it is. It's for a hometown perspective. So obviously that's better from a commercial point of view, but at the same time, it's also not fair when the Waratahs didn't get to play the Kings and the Jaguars this year. It's just the way it is. It's like the Stormers didn't get to play a New Zealand conference team. So I just feel like that just needs to be evened out more. For me, it's just the draw. If the conference system stays, that's fine with me. It's just they need to get the draw right. It's just how it just needs to be fair for every team.
They didn't need to play the Kings, though, because they played the Rebels and the Force and the Reds.
But again, the Brumbies played the Force twice, I think, and then the Waratahs only played the Force once.
Yeah, so they probably still lost like last year.
Well, that's the thing. But I mean, if they had the Kings and the Jaguars instead of just the Sunwolves and then 3 South African teams who were somewhat decent, that's would have been a bit fairer in my opinion. But
we could go on.
Yes, we could.
All night long about this. We could go on forever, but we're going to wrap it up there.
I guess just last for you, Cornflake. Do you want to see it changed, or do you feel like it's fine the way it is?
No, I think the goal has been achieved, to be quite honest. I think that's what they're wanting to do, is what we've got in the quarterfinals. Those 4 matches played in all of the 3 countries is what the goal is, to keep the interest high. If we went into these quarterfinals with 3 matches in 4 matches in New Zealand, which was possible, or even one in South Africa, got to give it to the Lions, 1 in South Africa and 3 in New Zealand, Australia's not going to give a shit. They're not going to care at all. Not that they're probably going to care anyway with the Brumbies only playing, but, you know, they've still got a match. And I think that's what they're trying to do, is keep the interest there all season long until maybe the last week when your country's not involved anymore, and that could, you know, that'll be fine by then. But I think that's the goal, and you got to say, they've done it, they've achieved it, however fair or not it is.
But again, the semi-finals, if it's all New Zealand, won't be the best for a Australia or a South African fan either, would it? So
No.
I mean, if it was a South Africa,
if
it was a New Zealand derby in the quarterfinals, at least there's still a New Zealand team there. You know what I mean? If there's if it was the Bulls versus the Stormers, at least there's still a South African team in the quarterfinals, in the semi-finals.
Yeah.
So you know that goes two ways.
I think for anyone outside of New Zealand, you know, 4 New Zealand teams in the semi-finals is obviously the worst case scenario. You know, I was really hoping the Lions would play the Sharks, so you know at least we're guaranteed a South African team in the semis. But you know, it's probably not going to happen having 4 teams in the semi-finals, but it could still happen.
So what you're saying is you'd prefer a system, maybe, possibly, where they stayed in their conferences until the conference winners played each other in a semi-final and then a final. What would you say to that?
Potentially. But again, if it's an Australian conference, if they just play the Australian conference, you're going to have the Brumbies versus the Waratahs again. That's the same sort of system. The Australian conference is obviously the worst conference. So, again, I'm not sure how that would work, but...
I think it'll be pretty boring, to be honest, just seeing... You know, I see why it's so hard for the organisers to do it, because it's so hard working out, you know, a schedule of 4 different countries now. Yeah, 4 different countries. So
5 different countries.
5 different countries.
Japan, yeah.
Oh, true. Yeah. So yeah, it's. I wouldn't like to see only South African teams play each other until they get to the quarterfinals. But I'd like to see some variation. I'd like to see all South African teams maybe play some New Zealand, maybe play some Australian teams, but you know, definitely not just, you know, countries playing within themselves.
Yeah.
I think the last point is, why wouldn't it possibly be smarter if the South Africans had their own conference and then the Australians had their own conference with the Sunwolves, and then the New Zealand had one with the Jaguars, unfortunately, or maybe bring in the Pacific Islander team, you know, if they made it more simpler like that, instead of having 4 conferences, maybe have 3 instead. You know, we could go on for this for ages.
Yeah, you could go on for it.
But I mean, it's just too complicated at the moment. For the casual fan, it's too complicated.
It's simple. You got 4 conference winners, 4 wild cards. 1 to 4, 5 to 8. 1 plays 8, 2 plays 7, 3 plays 6, 4 plays 5.
I like the final system. I do like the final system with the way they do that, 1 versus 8. Because remember, you used to have the top 2 and used to get a bye last season. So
like the NRL.
Yeah, which is pathetic.
Yeah.
So I'm happy with how the finals system works, but it just needs to figure out a better way to get the teams in the finals in the first place.
Yeah, it's just been a bit awkward this year with, you know, the expansion and that, so they just need to try and work out the last few bugs in the system, but it is a good final system though.
I think may see some changes in the next couple of years. Who knows what's going to happen, but for the quarterfinals, that is our time for today. Thank you, Brett, for joining me.
No, thanks, man.
And of course, Cannon, thanks for joining me once again.
Thanks, mate.
And we'll be back maybe for semi-finals if you guys are keen for that as well.
Depends who's in it. If there's no
Won't be the Brumbies. That's cool.
Let's at least hope the Lions will get through.
Yeah, well, it
There's
could
going
be
to
all
be
New
South
Zealand
African
teams.
side in the finals.
And it'll just be me doing it by myself again because it's New Zealand side. Whatever. Anyway, we'll see what happens this weekend, and we'll see you all next time. Thanks for joining me, guys. And until next time, take care.